Welcome to the Fit and Fabulous podcast with Dr. Jamie Seaman. Hey everybody, it's Dr. Jamie, Dr. Fit and Fabulous, and I cannot tell you how excited I am to be seated in this chair right now, filming our first episode of the Fit and Fabulous podcast. This has been a couple years in the making. I've been wanting to get on the podcasting platforms to help share more information with the rest of the world. This is going to be a super exciting podcast. We're not going to be boring. We're going to be talking about tons of different topics because you guys know I'm a mom, I'm a doctor, I'm a Titan. I like to work out. We eat healthy. We do fun things all across the board. Lots of topics, both men, both women, children, everybody can listen to this podcast. But I want you to understand who I am and where I came from and how we got here to the Fit and Fabulous podcast. So let's roll back many, many years. I was born and raised right here in Nebraska, born and raised in the Midwest, dead center of the United States. And I went to college here at the University of Nebraska. I was a Cornhusker. So for all those Cornhusker listeners out there, go Big Red. And I played college softball. So I was a 3-sport athlete growing up and I was pretty healthy, but I went to college and played softball, and then I met my husband, Ben, and big shout out to him. If you don't follow him on social media, he's at Sergeant Fit and Fabulous on Instagram and socials. So we moved to Omaha after we got married, and I started medical school. And this was a sudden shift in my life, going from being a 3-sport athlete, super active. I really wasn't eating that healthy to suddenly being sedentary and sitting hours in the classroom, studying, taking tests on the weekends, and suddenly my health really started to catch up with me. I was struggling to maintain my weight. I was having to work really hard in the gym, did my little stint of P90X, like I think everybody in the entire world did that year. And I was counting calories, and that's what I knew. Now, back in college, my degree was actually in nutrition, exercise, and health science. So here I was, I had gone through nutrition training, I'm getting my medical degree, and I'm really struggling. Just like I think a lot of listeners out there probably are too. So we decided to start a family in medical school and had our first daughter, Brecklin, when I was a medical student. And fast forward 23 months, we had our second daughter, Sienna. And then another 23 months later, we had our third daughter, Kimber. And during my pregnancies, I failed my glucose testing. So I'm an OBGYN, and we do this test that tests for gestational diabetes. And I failed miserably, especially in my second pregnancy. And after my third daughter was born, I was diagnosed with prediabetes and hypothyroidism. In 2015, I had a major tragedy happen in my life, and it was a real turning point for me, not only as a doctor and a mom, but really as a human, because the fact of the matter, and this is going to sound so blunt and so negative, but we're all dying. We're all dying. Newsflash, we're all dying. As soon as we're born, when I bring babies into the world, a clock is set. And the only thing we're really guaranteed in life is death. And so my goal in March of 2015 was to live my life with a different purpose and a different passion. And that's the message that I want to spread on the Fit and Fabulous podcast is we don't know how much time we have on this earth. And so I want the time that you do have here to be a little bit more fit and a little bit more fabulous. So every topic that I bring to you is because I feel like it's going to add value to your life. And I have definitely changed my own world implementing a lot of these strategies and things that we're going to talk about. So that's essentially my story. So in March of 2015, I set out on a mission to show the world and my patients that I'm willing to do the hard work that I ask them to do every single day. You see, as a healthcare provider, we're supposed to be stewards of health, right? And I think that we should walk the walk and we should talk the talk because we have a huge problem in America. And one of the biggest problems that I was dealing with was insulin resistance. And I had no idea that I was struggling with it from the outside. If you went back and looked at a picture of me from March of 2015, I really looked pretty healthy. And you cannot judge a book by its cover. Insulin resistance isn't just a problem to women. It's not just a problem to the United States. It's a problem that we have worldwide. Just in the United States alone, we have a high rate of diabetes and insulin resistance, but worldwide, there's 12.2 million people, likely more, struggling with type 2 diabetes. And there's about 3 times as many people dealing with prediabetes. And then there's more people beyond that that are dealing with just what we call insulin resistance. And insulin resistance is kind of the 1, 3, 5, 10-year plan to diabetes. And that was the train that I was on. And the problem with insulin resistance, like I said, is that 9 out of 10 people who have it don't know they have it. And so I started changing my diet. I had this nutrition degree and I had heard all sorts of things, eat low fat, count calories, and I was just as confused as a lot of you are. And so I set out on a personal journey. I started eating whole foods. I tried paleo, I tried keto, I tried all these different things, and I really ended up settling on a ketogenic diet. Now, when you listen to this podcast, the things that we talk about, it's not for everybody. We're all built from different genetics and different backgrounds, and we all live different lifestyles, different jobs, different activity levels. So really what I want you to do is I want you to be your own expert. I want you to try things. But at the end of the day, the way that we fix the healthcare system in this world is that we have to have a level of personal accountability. You see, nobody should care about their health more than you, not your doctor, not your mom, not your spouse. So we need to start taking personal accountability. People always say, you lie in the bed that you make. So you make it and you lie in it, and you have to live with the consequences of all the choices and decisions and actions that you make on a daily basis. But the reason that I think nutrition is so powerful and that it could make such a profound impact on our medical system is that it's something we do every day. We do it multiple times per day. Think about it. Most people eat 3 meals a day, probably more, when you include snacks and things like that. And so it's such an easy way to profoundly impact your health in a short amount of time. And so I started the ketogenic diet, and it's had different variations to it. In 2018, I became a carnivore for a little while, and now my lifestyle is very much more kind of keto carnivore, very nutrient dense animal foods. I do eat plants here and there. I do add carbs back in. I'm really just trying to be my own expert and figure out a way that my body functions the best it can for what I do. Because I live a crazy life. I'm a mom of 3 kids. I'm an OBGYN. I work out at 5 a.m. almost every single morning. I've got a husband. We love to travel. I want to live life. I don't want to spend the last 15, 20, 30 years of my life with doctor's appointments and filling medications or hospitalizations or injuries. You see, as we age, one of the reasons that we develop metabolic resistance is that our cells age. Like I said, we're dying and there's no way to fight that. But if we could live more quality years, have a longer health span where we had years where we could do all the fun things we want to do, I think that's what life is all about. It's about human interactions, hanging out with other people. I think the currency in the world is human relationships. And so I'm so glad that you're tuning into this podcast, because that's what we're going to do here. We're going to connect as a community and we're going to learn from each other. So that is a little bit about me. I practice in Omaha, Nebraska. I'm currently at Mid-City OBGYN, private practice OBGYN. So I do surgery. I see patients in clinic. I do well women. I see teenagers all the way through menopause. I deliver babies at all hours of the day. I'm a full-time practicing OBGYN, but because of my passion in nutrition, I also went back to school. After medical school, I completed a fellowship in integrative medicine. And integrative medicine is basically really looking at other modalities that can help patients, things like diet and nutrition, things like movement, Tai Chi, yoga, supplementation, acupuncture. I really think that healthcare would be better off if we worked more collaboratively with some of these other alternative therapies, because I think patients, especially in this year, are really kind of opening their eyes to those things. I think COVID kind of ripped the Band-Aid off a little bit, in a sense about the problems that we have deep down inside of our bodies with mental health and metabolic resistance and all of these things. And integrative medicine is absolutely evidence-based. It is. I think there's a lot of people out there that think it's like woo-woo, voodoo, quackery, or whatever you want to call it. I think that functional medicine, integrative medicine sometimes get a bad rap, but that's really not the case. A lot of what we do has evidence behind it. But the other thing that we have to understand is that as a scientist, as a medical doctor, we always have to be questioning what we know. Think about what we knew 10, 15 years about genetics, the microbiome. Scientific discoveries are happening every single day. So we always have to be questioning the narrative. And for me, I really just want to advocate for things that make people feel better and function better because our time here is very, very short. Okay, well, enough about me and enough about my story. For those of you who don't follow me, you can find me on Instagram at Dr. Fit and Fabulous. I'm on Facebook. We've got a YouTube channel. If you want to watch the video portions of any of these podcasts, hop over to our YouTube channel. Okay, let me tell you how this podcast is going to work. Obviously, not every podcast is just going to be me sitting here in a chair talking to you. I want to bring on the best experts in the world to talk about a variety of different topics. And like I said earlier, we're going to talk about ketogenic therapy because I'm a board certified ketogenic nutrition specialist. We'll talk about OBGYN stuff because, that's what I do. I'm a vagina doctor. We're going to talk about being a mom because I'm a mom of 3 girls and I lead a very busy life and I don't make excuses for, my ability to take care of my body and take care of my mind. If you don't make time for health now, you'll have to make time for sickness later. And that's just the truth. But we're going to talk about sexual health, working out, sleeping. I don't know. Really, the sky is the limit on the Fit and Fabulous podcast. And at the end of every single episode, we're going to do my favorite part of the podcast. I put a vote out there for you guys to tell me what we should name this podcast. And there was a resounding answer. And that was that you have a brand, it's Fit and Fabulous. This has to be the Fit and Fabulous podcast. So here we are. God bless you all. Thank you for your feedback. You guys win. I bow down to all of you. This is the Fit and Fabulous podcast with Dr. Jamie Seaman. But I'm a vagina doctor, and God bless my husband's heart when I got the last name Seaman. I mean, what a great freaking name to be an OBGYN, right? I can laugh at it. I have a great sense of humor, and I'm a glass half full kind of person. So the second place name for this podcast was going to be the semen analysis. And I think that we should incorporate into every episode. So what we're going to do is after I interview my guest, I'm going to give you the semen analysis. And that's essentially my opinion about the topic that the guest and I talked about, my thoughts about the topic, or on today's episode of the semen analysis, I'm just going to review a couple new research articles that I have been loving, and I want to share them with you. And so that's what we're going to do today on the semen analysis. So I'm going to go through 2 different studies that I love and share the information in them and kind of my thoughts about it. And so, one of the things I have seen on social media in the past couple of years of being in this space is that people think the ketogenic diet is a fad, or that it's going to go away, or that it's, quackery. It's just about calorie restriction, right? You've got all these people eat plants, eat meat, eat whatever. I think the problem is that it's misconceived. The ketogenic diet and ketogenic therapies have a specific place and purpose, and it's not about weight loss. Everybody thinks that people go keto because they want to lose weight, but ketones actually work as cellular signaling molecules. And when we look at the science, we know that calorie restriction actually increases the lifespan and increases longevity. But the cool thing is that having the presence of ketones and ketone bodies in the bloodstream, it actually mimics a lot of the benefits of calorie restriction. There is this cool study, Ketone Bodies as Signaling Metabolites. It's written by John Newman and Eric Verdin. And this was published all the way back in 2014. And ketogenic research has been happening for hundreds of years. We, really heard about the ketogenic diet when it was being studied for children with epilepsy. But back in 2014, they looked at ketone bodies as signaling metabolites. And what do they really do inside the bloodstream? Well, the most common ketone body in the bloodstream is BHB, or beta hydroxybutyrate. And yes, it's an energy source, but it also works to signal your cells, and it has lots of downstream effects inside the body. And some of those things are like increasing something called BDNF, which I like to think of as Miracle-Gro for the brain. And so it helps with creating synapses in the brain. And as we age, that's one thing that really affects a lot of Americans is neurological dysfunction, right? Dementia, Alzheimer's disease. It also increases GABA and decreases glutamate. And so it's decreasing the excitatory neurons in your brain, and it actually has a calming effect. It also inhibits something called the NLRP3 inflammasome, which creates inflammation in the body. So that's right, just the presence of ketones has an anti-inflammatory effect. And then it also inhibits something called HDAC and decreases mTOR, increases AMPK, increases FOXO3, increases cellular energy like ATP, reduces insulin, and reduces reactive oxygen species because it's a cleaner burning energy source than compared to glucose. So, that's a whole bunch of science, blah, 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 blah. On the semen analysis, what I really want to do is break it down. Break it down so that my 10-year-old kid could understand what I'm trying to say, okay? And what I'm trying to say is that the presence of ketones, being on a ketogenic diet, even for just a couple weeks at a time, you know what it does? It increases stress resistance. Okay, it makes you more resilient. It has some anti-neoplastic properties. That's right, anti-cancer properties. It increases your longevity, and it definitely improves your metabolic health. So for all the nutrition and health gurus out there, the name of the game is really metabolic health, and you can achieve it a variety of ways. I'm not telling you that this is the one and only thing that will do this, but as a board-certified ketogenic nutrition specialist, I wouldn't be helping the majority of people unless I was telling you that there are a bajillion reasons why people need ketogenic therapy: Alzheimer's, epilepsy, autoimmune conditions, and yes, insulin resistance and obesity and weight loss absolutely fall into those categories. So I also want to share one more that I think is super, super relevant to 2021. This is a very recently published article, literally just published, and I'm just trying to find the date on here. I believe it was June 2021. Yes, it's super recent. And this is called "The Very Low Carb Diet Enhances Human T-Cell Immunity Through Immunometabolic Reprogramming." You can go find this. I actually shared this on Instagram just a while back, like a day or two after this was published. Yes, here we go. Yes, June of 2021, just a couple days ago. Okay, so basically, I just talked about how ketones work as cellular signaling molecules, right? There's all these cool things that we see ketones do inside the body. And there was a study that came out back in 2018 showing that there was some protective effects against influenza being in a state of ketosis. And so with COVID, we know that COVID patients get more sick if they have underlying metabolic dysfunction because it hijacks the immune system. So would being in a state of ketosis be helpful for treatment of COVID, or could it help hopefully prevent you from getting COVID or getting severe COVID? And that's the cool part about this study, is because it not only looked at an in vitro model, but it looked at an in vivo model. When we look at studies, that's cool if it works in a petri dish, but I'm not a petri dish. You're not a petri dish. We're living, walking, breathing humans. So they actually looked at this in actual humans. So let me thumb through here to the page. Let's go past all these like boring graphs and things like that, because I highlighted the areas that I really wanted to share with you. But they essentially had 44 healthy volunteers, and they put them on a ketogenic diet for 3 weeks. Okay, that's nothing. You could do anything for 3 weeks. Okay, so they lowered their carbs, and they put them on this ketogenic diet, and they watched their blood ketone levels, and they saw a significant increase in their blood ketone levels. And so that's the cool part, is you can actually measure if you're in ketosis, and we can have a whole podcast on that. But they made sure that their BHB levels were between 1.0 and 1.5. And they detected them all the way through the 3 weeks. And there was no relevant side effects reported from being on the ketogenic diet. So that's one thing that a lot of people complain about. Oh, adherence is hard. There's side effects. Well, nobody really experienced side effects that were significant in this study. And the ketogenic diet also led to a significant decrease in the participants' BMI. And it was there was profound weight loss actually in anybody with a BMI over of 25. Okay, so that's incredible. Great. Okay, so what they saw though is there were substantial alterations in T-cell immunometabolism in response to the presence of the beta-hydroxybutyrate. So our immune system has all these cells, right? B cells, T cells, our innate immune system, our adaptive immune system, and they help keep us healthy. And so the ketogenic diet led to an increase not only in mitochondrial mass, decrease in reactive oxygen production, and aerobic oxidative metabolism through the respiratory chain of the mitochondria, but it induced changes in the human T cell immunometabolism, and it promoted T cell development. How cool is that? It actually allowed the immune system to work better. And so really, in conclusion, in these participants, they said that the ketogenic diet significantly reshaped the human T cell immunity toward a more powerful yet controlled adaptive immune response. And so, the problem is that with our Western diet, it is really an endangerment to public health. And they highlighted that in this study. The diet of most people, standard American diet, Western diet, is almost 60% carbohydrates. Well, you're sure as heck not going to be producing ketones eating 60% carbohydrates. And this type of diet has been shown over the last 10, 20, 30, 50 years now that it increases the rates of obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and neurovascular diseases, and cancer. So think of the three things that are most likely to kill you or make your life really miserable. And that's cancer, neurodegenerative diseases, and cardiovascular disease. And so the problem is that we eat all these carbohydrates, we abuse carbohydrates, we develop these metabolic disturbances, and it causes a chronic, low-grade inflammation. And from our adipose tissue, now fat isn't just this blubbery substance that sits under our skin. It actually works as an endocrine organ, and it releases these inflammatory cytokines. And so forced abuse of carbohydrates in the diet is a very main driver of these conditions, and it results in this very unspecific activation of our innate immune system. And it's not only harmful in itself, but also strongly impairs our adaptive immune responses, and it hampers the ability to create immunological memory. So if you are worried about COVID's not going away. There's no cure. It's not going away. It's probably going to be in our world forever. We have to figure out what's the end game here. How do we live amongst viruses and bacteria and funguses? How do we live amongst these living organisms? And we have to foster our immune system, and we can absolutely do that. We've seen how powerful the presence of ketones are to nurture our immune system. So I just loved this study so much. And of course, the very last line of this study says, in conclusion, our study changes the perspective on nutrition as a clinical tool and could help to redefine the role of dietary interventions in modern medicine. Well, dang, that just sounds like what I've been trying to do for the last 5 or 6 years. So, applause to these authors for performing this study, not only in a petri dish, but in real humans. So thank you guys for listening to the semen analysis. And I cannot wait to bring you the second episode of the Fit and Fabulous podcast with Dr. Jamie Semen. Go check it out. Tell all your friends about it. Come find me on social media, you guys. I'll see you all very soon. Thank you all for listening to the Fit and Fabulous podcast with Dr. Jamie Semen. You can find our podcast on every platform that's streaming these days, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please go download our episodes and make sure you leave us a review and your comments. We absolutely value your feedback.